pasar, tú me quisieras lo mismo que 20 años atrás. Con qué tristeza miramos un amor que se nos va. Es un pedazo del alma que se arranca sin piedad. Es un pedazo del alma que se arranca sin piedad.
Hola, buenas tardes a todos. Buenas tardes a Nick Gold. Hi, Nick. It's great to see you from London, and thanks so much for being with us. Hoy vamos a hacer una transmisión muy especial. Vamos a hablar con el productor, uno de los 3 productores, el creador del disco Buena Vista Social Club, y vamos a enfocar en esta transmisión desde las oficinas de Discos Corasón en México, hablando con Nick Gold en Londres, y vamos a enfocar sobre la semilla, los primeros momentos de este proyecto que fue la grabación en La Habana. So Nick, we're going to concentrate in this conversation about the beginnings of this project. When you were in the studio, you arrived with Ray Kuda in 1996 to the studio in La Habana. And the first thing I want to ask you is, tell us a little bit about the Egren Studios in Habana at that moment, please.
Well, yeah, that's Egren Studios is the most wonderful studio I've ever worked in. Sonically, has the most beautiful sound that I've ever had in a studio. So you walk there, right in central Havana, and there's these glass doors off the street, and it doesn't look like anything. Doesn't look like a studio or anything. It looks like houses, like the rest of the street. And you go in these glass doors and go up these wooden stairs and along this wooden corridor, and then you open these doors into this very large wooden room, wooden panels on the walls, wooden roof, wooden floor, and these little wooden green chairs in the middle. And if you walked around in the studio, even footsteps sound beautiful in that studio because of the incredible natural reverb it has. And it's been there since it was built in the 1950s, I believe, by Panart Records. And, you know, there's a lot of amazing recordings have happened there. It's most famously probably the Panart jam sessions with a lot of them with Cachita's uncle fronting them. But a lot of famous recordings have been made there. Los Compadres recorded there, but also recorded there. So it was like, you know, some sort of cathedral of Cuban music, really.
That's great, the Cathedral of Cuban Music, and to be there. Nick, I understand that you'd rented the studio for 10 days, but you lost 2 days of those because of an unexpected problem with the sound deck. But then I also understand that those 2 days weren't lost at all, and that part of the magic began, in fact, when you couldn't record. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so we in the first week we were there, we spent 5 or 6 days recording Juan de Marcos Gonzalez's Afro-Cuban All-Stars album, which went down in sections. So it's at first the rhythm section, then the piano, then the horns, then the singers. So that was recorded very much like a more modern record at the time would have been recorded. And that went down. And then the day that we finished recording that, the very next day, Rai arrived and we started working on the record that became Buena Vista Social Club. And so we had everyone in the studio, a lot of musicians in the studio and a lot of sounds happening. And Rai and Jerry were looking at putting up the microphones and so forth. And then the tape machine broke. So we still don't know. I'm confused now as what happened, whether it was something to do with the electrical currents or something to do with the actual tape machine. But I looked at one point, I looked on the floor and the whole tape machine was in pieces all over the floor, tiny little moving parts and mechanical bits and bobbins all over the floor. And I could have cried. And we had to get a message out to Eduardo came to our rescue actually and brought up the missing part from Mexico.
Yeah.
So, you know, in a way, it was horrible looking at this room of musicians and not actually being able to record. But on the other hand, it completely took the pressure off. And because you had all these amazing musicians in the studio, a lot of whom hadn't known each other or may have heard of each other before, and they all started playing in these little pockets around the studio. So you'd walk in, and immediately as you walked in the studio, there was the piano was there, and Ruben would be playing, and he would just play and play and play all day. And then you'd move a step the other side, and Eliades would be playing something, and likewise Compi. But so everybody started to just play the songs that they loved. And in the end, I think we'd been working a long time before we went to the studio, working on repertoire with cassettes. I was posting cassettes to Cuba and posting them to Africa, because it was originally conceived as a collaboration with some African musicians. But I think there was only 2 songs that survived the original repertoire list in the end, because all the musicians themselves were coming up with much better propositions. So in the end, we got this amazing thing where you got basically like the Desert Island discs, Desert Island songs of all these amazing musicians. So they were coming up with songs that we never would have thought of, and lots better than the ones we had on our list.
Oh, that's so great to hear that. So Nick, here's a very brief video that we've dug out from our own archives, and it is Eliades Ochoa, 2 days in London, filmed in London 2 days before you met him for the first time in person.
Esta es una guaracha de Nico Sequito. ¿Quién me ve con mi mujer? Si no es soltero se casa, pero el que llegue a mi casa, si es casado echa a correr. Eso no es una mujer, eso es una pintorera. Tiene genio de pantera, que arranque de Lucifer. Y si la viera, cómo se pone esa bandolera, gritándome donde quiera de esta manera. Menéame la cuna, Ramón, menéame la cuna, Ramón, menéame la cuna, y me da, si no la meneo. Y cómo se pone si no la meneo, me saca de la casa si no la meneo.
Okay, so that was Eliades in 1994.
Amazing.
And Nick, thinking of the other great Santiago de Cuba artist in the album, Compay Segundo, can you tell us why you think that Ray Cooder called him El Jefe?
Well, yeah, Ray also said about him that it was like having Louis Armstrong on the session. And he said about him, he knew all the best songs, but he also knew the way how to do them. So because he'd been around forever, he knew and had met and listened to Cinta Garay. He'd recorded and worked with Matamoros. He'd worked with his own duet with Compadres, Duo Los Compadres. So he was, already an amazing composer and soloist, guitarist, second voice singer. He really was an incredible musician. But I think it was his very definitive way of knowing how this music worked and how to do it. And he was very declamatory about how to go about that. If anyone made a mistake, there was this booming voice he had, incorrecto, he'd say, and everybody was quaking, but he wasn't joking. He knew how to do it. He knew a beautiful way to make that music work.
Me pusieron como nombre Máximo Francisco Repilado Muñoz. Ahora, mi nombre artístico, Compay Segundo. A mí no me tiembla la voz, yo tengo un segundo. La siento, porque la música hay que sentirla. El que no siente la música no la interpreta bien, porque hay que sentirla, hay que tener fuerza, un poder. La música es fuerte y el que la va a expresar tiene que expresarla así, con esa seguridad y esa fortaleza. y adecuarla a lo que es la vida, el paisaje, la naturaleza, el amor.
So there's a little memory of
Well, that's
Compay.
that's a fantastic bit of speech there, isn't it?
Yeah.
Incredible.
We've got somebody waiting to say a few brief words to you from New Orleans, where he's on tour. Adelante, Eliades.
Soy Eliades Ochoa. Nick Gol, qué bueno poder enviarte un saludo, Nick, gigante como tú. Un hombre, un joven en aquel entonces, de hace 25 años atrás, que tuvo la visión de hacer un disco para que se lo agradezca a la música cubana, y estoy seguro que te lo agradece el mundo. Nicole, muchas felicidades. Muchas felicidades. Qué alegría en saludarte. Un abrazo de Eliades Ochoa.
Thank you, Eliades, one of many musicians whose lives were changed dramatically by this CD. We want to
That was very, very sweet. I don't know what to say.
We'd like to ask you now about another great artist, also born in Eastern Cuba, although his style is more related to Havana. First of all, with a few photos by the great Mexican photographer Eniac Martinez, here's a brief reminder of the much-loved Ibrahim Ferrer.
Ay, candela, candela, candela me quemo ahí. Ay, candela, candela, candela me quemo ahí.
Puso un baile, una jutilla para una gran diversión. De timbalero un ratón y alegraba el campo un día. Un gato también venía, elegante y placentero. Buenas noches, compañero, siempre fijo hacia el timbal. Para el leitivo de tocar, para descansar un poco. Salió el ratón medio loco, también voy a descansar. Y el gato en su buen bailar, bailaba un danzón liviano. El ratón se subió al guano y dice bien placentero. Y ahora si quieren bailar, busquen otro timbalero.
So Ibrahim didn't really make it as a star in Havana, and we all know that he was living very humbly, shining shoes, oleando, as we say here, when Juan de Marcos brought him in for an audition. Can you describe that moment when Ibrahim unexpectedly arrived and began to sing?
Yeah. I mean, it is interesting of Ibrahim being from east of Cuba as well, because you really have got these three amazing giants from three different generations, Compay, Ibrahim and Eliades, all from there, which really, I think, dominate the sound of the record into making an Eastern Cuban record. But at the time, we were trying a bolero in the studio. Ruben was playing Dos Gardenias, and Puntillita was singing it, and Rai just said, is there someone with a softer voice that we can find? And Barbarito was in the control room, and he heard Rai ask for this, and he mentioned to Marcos, he said, go and get Ibrahim. And Juan de Marcos was saying, Ibrahim, so he remembered Ibrahim from Los, he didn't know him personally, but he knew of him. So he rushed out to get him, and apparently it took some persuading. Marcos went, and Ibrahim didn't want to come. He just said, I've had enough with showbiz. I'm not interested. He was very disillusioned with how it had treated him. But we were just doing whatever else we were doing in the studio. And maybe half an hour later, Juan de Marcos came in with Ibrahim. And Ibrahim walked in, and immediately he was a very beautiful man, Ibrahim. He was very, very slim. He moved incredibly elegantly, Rai said, like a cat. And he, I think the moment he walked into the studio, Eliades saw him and started playing that song, started playing Candela to him, because he recognized that Ibrahim knew the song, and it was his way of communicating, greeting Ibrahim. Ibrahim came over and started singing it. And you know, I think jaws dropped really, because in the end, Ibrahim was amazing in that he could do that up-tempo improvised singing, but he was also like an incredible bolero singer, which that really was the moment when he started to sing Dos Gardenias. The very first notes he sang on Dos Gardenias, and everyone really took their breath away. It's just beautiful.
Oh, it's so good to hear, and it's so good. I'd never heard before exactly how it was when he entered the studio. So thank you very much for that, Nick. And I wanted to say at this point that although, you know, this is a sort of great nostalgia trip for all of us, including most of us who are here now, I feel that Buena Vista is so much more than nostalgia because of how it's inspired during 25 years and continues in 2021 to inspire artists of different generations, different genres, different cultures, and Ibrahim continues in this way. Although he's not with us, he is with us through his music and through the reinterpretations. And so here's just a little piece. We don't want to make it too long. It's just the very ending of a piece that was recorded recently in Santiago de Cuba, so that you could feel how important what you've done and this project is to the very roots, to Eastern Cuba, and in this case an all-female band, Morena Son, singing Candela.
Somos Morena Son, desde acá de Santiago de Cuba, con todo nuestro cariño. Ahora vamos a hacer para ustedes un tema bien sabroso, Candela. Vamos, Aimee, márcalo, Candela.
De interpretar es un tema de Faustino Ramas, el guayabero. Es un compositor holguinero que él se dedicó muchísimo a hacer guarachas, sobre todo de doble sentido, y también es un tema muy popularizado que se hizo inmenso en el mundo entero por el Buena Vista Social Club en la voz de Ibrahim Ferrer.
Wow.
Moving on now to Omar Portuondo. Since we're concentrating here on the original recording of Buena Vista Social Club, we want to hear the real story from you, Nick, about how it was that she suddenly became a participant, and such an important participant, in this recording with the exquisite and unforgettable 20 años.
Yeah, we were in the studio. There was a lot of musicians coming in and out of the studio all the time during these sessions, because musicians were telling other musicians what was happening, and people were congregating in the studio. And there was one point, so I can't remember if this was Juan de Marcos or if this was Rai, but they saw Omara in the studio downstairs, and she was recording her own album down there. And Rai had known her from a session from a couple of weeks before. He went there with the Chieftains to record something, so he was vaguely familiar with her already. And Juan de Marcos, of course, knew her, but they asked her up to the studio. Omara, come to the studio, and she said, "No, I'm going home now. I finished for the day. I'm going home." And she was persuaded to come up to the studio, partly, I think, by Compai, who she knew Compai was there, and really they wanted her to come and sing a duet with Compai. So she came to the studio and said, "I can't work with you today. I'm leaving for Vietnam tomorrow. I'm going on tour. I can't do this." She was persuaded to do it. And really, within, I think, half an hour of her walking into the studio, she was sat next to Compai in the middle of the room singing 20 años, and all the songs came together incredibly quickly. Even though a lot of the musicians, it wasn't an ensemble that knew each other already. Everybody seemed to gel very quickly. And they just, I don't remember them rehearsing very much at all. They joked with each other because both of them did that, Compa and Amara. So they were teasing each other a lot. And then they just went into that song, and it's just incredibly beautiful. You could hear a pin drop during it. And then that recording that we did went straight down to stereo. We had no mixing on it. We tried to mix it afterwards. We could never mix it nicely. It was that very immediate performance straight down once that was so gorgeous about it.
That's amazing. So perfect right from the start. That's
yeah, it was. She did sing. She sang one other song. She did a version of Lágrimas Negras and then left. So I think she was in the studio for maybe 2 hours tops, and then left and couldn't come back because she was off on tour, off on a plane the next day.
Yeah, and what she left was an enormous legacy. No, that's what it was saying.
Incredible.
Yeah, in fact, during this week we've been hearing more versions of 20 años than other songs from 25 years ago, where it was Chan Chan 25 years ago seems to be 20 años right now.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. Nick, we've got a little piece of audio that arrived about 20 minutes ago, and we'd like you to hear it. It's very brief.
Hola, Nick Gold. Te mando un saludo desde La Habana. También a Discos Corasón, México. Espero que la promoción del disco Buena Vista Social Club 25 años sea un éxito. Un beso enorme, Omara Portuondo.
Wow. Incredible.
Forgive me if this is a 2021 question, but I'm very interested to know if in 1996, before you left for London for Havana, or while you were in the studio in Havana with Juan de Marcos and Rai, did you consider having another woman as a protagonist or as part of the musicians of Buena Vista Social Club?
Well, we did actually, yeah. We did invite Selena Gonzalez to be a part of the project. I'd met Selena with you actually in 1986, I think, 86, 87. We toured Selena in the UK, and then we released a record of hers on Egram, and I just thought she was fantastic. And that's when we met Barbarito as well on that tour. So that's why he became a member of the group. But we did invite her, and apparently, well, I had to ask Juan de Marcos to invite her, and she said that she contacted her spiritual advisor, and they threw the shells, and the shells said no. And then we went back again a week before and asked her again, and she said no again. She just said no. It wasn't meant to be. So we had to do without her. But it was, yeah. Interesting.
A reflection of the whole thing of destiny going weaving through this project. Well, now, Nick, we've got a surprise for you in this, I suppose, little party we're putting on for you from Mexico.
This is brilliant.
Somebody who you know personally, who's waiting in the waiting room to greet you. Someone you were kind enough to invite to dinner in London when he was on tour with his daughters, Las Hermanas García. Adelante, Mariano.
Hola, Nick. Me da mucho gusto saludarte desde la bella Costa Chica de Guerrero. Y quiero en verdad felicitarte con mucho cariño por estos 25 años de aniversario de Buena Vista Social Club. Y quiero también aprovechar para agradecerte la gentileza y la hospitalidad que tuviste con nosotros cuando estuvimos en Inglaterra, por hospedarnos en tu casa e invitarnos a una rica cena. Muchas gracias, te lo digo de todo corazón. Quiero cantar una canción que seguramente conoces de sobra, pero un poco diferente porque se tradujo en el lamusco, que es mi lengua materna. Con mucho cariño para ti, esta canción. Shewitso Jinao Tawitsuha Luakuino Nandeteno Takatsona Manalkuindo Utoma Nawitsuha Teyoteche Noa No tiempo ni se te lei caljo yaso. Muchas felicidades y que lo disfrutes.
Wow, beautiful.
Yeah, as we mentioned before, 20 años continues in lots of different guises, including in Amusco, indigenous language. From,
Yeah, that was lovely.
From Guerrero, Oaxaca. Well, finally, we get to Rubén González, who for us in Mexico is probably the most iconic of all these incredible artists.
Rubén González.
And we want to ask you how on earth it was possible to make a recording as sublimely beautiful as Presentando Rubén González with a pianist who had been retired for several years in his house in Havana without access to a piano, and then he records that.
Yeah, I think we were amazingly lucky to get that moment with Rubén. I think when I arrived in Havana, Rubén was one of the first musicians I met. He was Wanda Marcos Gonzalez had invited him to his Afro-Cuban All-Stars project, and he had already got him rehearsing before that, so he didn't have a piano. And apparently, Wanda Marcos used to see him walking right the length of Havana every day to his friend Senen Suarez's house in order to play the piano at Senen's house. I didn't know this story until recently. So eventually, when he asked him to participate on the record, he had him rehearsing with Cachaito. So by the time we got there for the Afro-Cuban All-Stars album, he would just play and play and play all day. He played the piano. You really had to close the lid on the piano, very gently, mind you, to get him to stop so you could do anything else. And over that week, he got better and better and better. And for me, that was just music that I'd heard in my dreams, listening to him playing solo. And he would play these sort of fantasia medleys from danzón into son into descarga was just incredible, these flights of fancy. And then we kept him for the Buena Vista sessions, although that was supposed to be a Santiago based record with the Africans. When I realized the Africans couldn't come, I invited Rubén to stay for that record. And again, he got better and better. And by the time, right at the end, I asked him, could he make his own solo album? And he went, how much? so then we negotiated a bit with him, and he turned up with a tiny piece of paper, tiny little paper, like a bus ticket. And then he put that little bit of paper on the manuscript page on the piano. And it was almost like that list of songs was like a piece of music. And he just recorded that record in 2 very short afternoons with this amazing band. And I think Rai called it the tail end of a comet, those bits of outpourings from those musicians, but especially Rubén, because he was really extraordinary in those couple of months and for a few years. And then his memory started to go a little bit, and his abilities started to disappear. But we were incredibly lucky to have that moment with him when he was just he was really unparalleled. How he was playing was just incredible, with power and beauty and invention, just incredible.
It's beautiful what you say, Nick. And here in Mexico, a lot of us have memories of an incredible concert that he gave in the Metropolitan right at the beginning, before the film had come out. And it was very interesting, exactly like you say, that
I've got recordings of that.
Yeah. Cachaito put himself right by the side of the piano because the orchestra or the band was never sure what was going to come out.
No,
he sort of put that there as the bridge between the piano and and the band, and they all used to say that it was wonderful for them because it kept them really awake because they never knew what Ruben was going to come up with. And a very, very brief little video exactly on those 2 points taken from that concert that you've got, and also of Ruben talking about the importance of the piano.
Chanchullo.
Es como decir, para el músico, la música es como decir la comida. Hace falta el piano, estarlo manoseando siempre.
Ruben's great love of the piano is obvious in the material that the unedited, unreleased material that you're including with in this anniversary edition. And there's on one track you've included one of the comments of the other musicians who say, "Ruben, what are you doing there?" Can you tell us about that moment in the recording?
So during the sessions, Ruben would just play when nothing else was happening, and he would carry on playing. So during any other bit that was being recorded, he would play. So I don't know exactly what was happening at that precise moment, but that would have been, Ruben, we're trying to do something else here. He was off with these flights of fancy all the time.
Great. Well, Nick, I'd like to close this conversation by mentioning once again the legacy of this incredible project, and we have one last person waiting in the waiting room. Since the legacy is all about passing the music from, in this case, from father to son, as it should be. But before we're joined from Mérida in Southeast Mexico by the pianist Ruben González, thank you so much for your time, Nick. Thanks for sharing these really personal and professional and incredible memories. It's a privilege for us. And muchísimas gracias, Nick Gold, por haber estado con nosotros. Gracias a todos por habernos acompañado.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you.
It's a pleasure. Por favor, si les ha gustado esta transmisión, suscríbete a nuestro canal. And please subscribe to our channel so that we can continue doing events like this for y para la música, la buena música. Adelante, Rubencito.
Hola, hola. Saludos para todos. Aprovechando esta oportunidad que me han dado los amigos de Discos Corasón para enviarle un cordial saludo y un fuerte abrazo a nuestro amigo Nick Cole y muchos éxitos en este proyecto del 25 aniversario del Buena Vista. Recuerdo algo, un hecho que para mí está muy adentro, porque fue la única vez que tuve participación con mi padre directamente en el piano. Llego a los estudios de Llerenas, allá en La Habana, y me encuentro que estaban grabando un número para el disco de difunto Miguel Aná, creo que era el danzón Polo Nuevo. y a mi padre se le olvidó la primera parte completamente. Y me proponen hacer la primera parte y que él hiciera la segunda. Y créeme que fue bastante difícil porque me puse muy nervioso. Y bueno, creo que salió bastante bien. Y ese hecho lo tengo muy presente. No sé si Nick se acuerda de eso, yo creo que sí. Bueno, les mando un fuerte abrazo y muchos éxitos en el proyecto del 25 aniversario. Gracias.
The best possible school to learn music.
No, amazing. I do remember that really well because he played it and Ruben was sitting right next to him on the piano stool. And Ruben, like, he might have been nervous, Ruben Cito, but Ruben seemed to have complete confidence in him being able to do it. I do. It was very touching, actually.
Well, that's lovely because I think it's, at the end of the day, it is about the legacy. So thank you for letting us dive with you back into those days in September 1996. And let's hope that this legacy has a long life. I'm sure it will. And many congratulations to you.
Thank you. It's been such a treat, Mary. It's been really, really a treat. I'm having to hold a tear back.
Yeah.
But, you know, that session in that room never left me, really, because it was an incredibly powerful week watching these, you know, amazing artists just pouring out this beautiful material. I had a very heightened sense of responsibility during it. It's like, you know, I can't fuck this up. Something's important is happening here, and I must do everything I can to make sure we've got it.
Okay, Nick. Thanks so much, Nick. And that was a really great question to end this session. So, well, once again, many congratulations. Thanks for being with us. And
thank you so much.
Yeah, and best wishes from Mexico, and enjoy your holiday. Much earned, much deserved.
Thanks, Mary.
Vivo. Juventud, ¿dónde está la juventud?
¡La puerta! Qué susto más grande pasé cuando se quemaba la malla. Allí perdí mi gallito roncón, allí perdí mi gallina, allí perdí a los sobrinos de aquel famoso gallo roncón. También perdí a la comadre que no quiso bautizar, porque me quedé pelao, sin gallo y sin platanar. Porque me quedé pelao, sin gallo y sin platanar. Qué susto más grande pasé cuando se quemaba la malla. Allí perdí mi gallito roncón, allí perdí mi gallina, allí perdí a los sobrinos de aquel famoso gallo de morón. También perdí a la comadre que no quiso bautizar, porque me quedé pelao, sin gallo y sin platanar. Porque me quedé pelao, sin gallo y sin platanar. Sin platanar no valgo nada, sin platanar. ¿Y quién te bautizó?